I'm here to talk about the Garfield project, a 2-year project that run for 2 years apparently, but it was sponsored by the Swedish Innovation Agency, Vinnova. And we used it for different applications for Industry 4.0. And for those who don't know Industry 4.0, it's about automation and digitalization, the transformation from a more analog production industry to a more digital, using different VR settings and so on and so forth. So, but who am I? I am, Adam. And I work as a Chief Scientific Officer at InsetCoin, a gamification company based in Sweden. I'm also doing my PhD in applied information technology with a research focus on design science in socio-technical information system. But clearly, when being a Chief Scientific Officer at the gamification studio, I do a lot of research on gamification. So I have a question to you guys. Do we need better definitions for gamification? I don't want you to answer that, but I want you to think about it as I'm doing my presentation. We will wrap up in the end, but think about the question during my presentation, all right? Okay, focus. Have you read these? The Jobs Lost, Jobs Gained report by McKinsey Global Institute? Or The Changing Nature of Work by the World Bank? Or The Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum? No, probably not. They are quite tedious and unengaging. They don't use gamification. But their message are quite clear, and they're doing it independent from each other. And the short version of these very extensive reports is that 14% of the global workforce will need retraining as digitalization, automation, and AI transform work in the upcoming decade. And it will affect the industrialized countries, Europe and United States and Canada, more than other parts of the globe. We talk about these reports talk about 1/3 of the workforce will need find work in new occupations. And 1/3, how much is that? Yeah, in the US, it's about 166 million persons, not in school today, but in work, in employment. And in Germany, it's only 37 million, around 33% of the German population. Okay. And Yuval Noah Harari, along with other social scientists or historians, are talking about that automation could create a new global useless class, not a working class, but it's useless because innovation, development, and digitalization goes so fast, so people don't have time or don't have the skills to retrain and train if we don't change our mindsets about retraining in corporate training or adult education. But if these figures aren't troubling enough, after the COVID-19 crisis, the World Economic Forum said that you have to double these digits, double them, because a lot of work that are disappearing during the COVID-19 crisis won't come back ever, because they are the automation has already replaced the jobs lost. And the automation, it will not be the robots are coming, not like the James Cameron vision of the Terminator. No, it will be more like in the lower right corner. I took this picture when I was at the Hanover Fair and did a presentation about gamification. And these industrial robots, I think they're from ABB, they were serving drink and they blended a great mojito. I went there several times during the conference. It's a long conference, like this one, a week, and they didn't charge. So when I was going there for the third time in the same day, I started to realize that these robots, they didn't judge. They didn't judge me for having another mojito. They just served it. And that's one thing. Automation is coming fast, not because it can. And automation, it will not be robots. It will be these kinds of machines, this technology. Because as I know that these robots won't judge me when I'm having my next mojito, we know when we order a hamburger or whatever in these kind of slot-like machines, they don't judge you either. And research has been conducted on these machines that we more or less are willing, or we do, spend about 10% more when we buy food in these machines, because they don't judge if you have an ice cream, an extra slice of cheese, or a big cola or extra fries. So at the same time, companies are saving money because they are firing employees, and in the same time they also gain profit because we are more framed, or we are, nudged, talking about gamification, to spend more in these machines. So the existing workforce must therefore be prepared to adapt more quickly to new and some probably not yet invented professions. Upskilling, retraining, and continuous learning are essential components for professional success throughout the digital shift. Also, improving employee engagement by working towards a more employee-centered workplace is critical to accelerate innovation, creativity, and productivity. And speaking about employee engagement, we know from the latest Gallup, the most, accurate, because doing a Gallup survey in these times during the corona, it will not be a decent survey. So the last one, the 2019 one, is the most accurate. So 32% of the working age adults worldwide think that they have a good job. Only 32%. And at the same time, 85% of the employees worldwide think they are not engaged or are actively disengaged in their job. So, also, only 3% of the engaged employees have considered leaving work, but 45% of actively disengaged employees have considered leaving. There's a huge gap here. And this is a quotation. With the employees not engaged in their work, many companies find it difficult to accelerate innovation, creativity, productivity, and other essential elements that go into improving organizational performance. And therefore came the idea from Garfield, gamification of automation strategies for Industry 4.0. And we talked about retraining, we talked about onboarding, and we talked about pre-boarding. And we made this application to Vinnova, and we got accepted, and they thought that this was a very important research study. So we focused on inquiring how gamified modules could decrease lead time and increase value for both employees and employers within corporate retraining, employee pre-boarding, onboarding, and performance management. But we also wanted to increase the innovation exchange between academia and manufacturing industry. And we decided to do this with Gwen. Then you might ask, Gwen? And then I will answer. Gwen, gamify the world ending. Because we have spotted the Gwen a couple of years ago, and it was mostly designed or developed for e-commerce and e-commerce and different kind of commercial elements. Here is, I think it's a commercial they did with the Nike Corporation. But we were very thrilled about how their architecture have designed the API, because Gwen was only an API and you could add any front end to it. And that was very intriguing in this project. So we can put it in a lot of different information systems and still get very good gamification. But we just had to change different front end elements. And also the Guadmin, the designer interface, where the designer could see statistics, graphs on live implementations. They could also switch to different languages, see the front-end styling, see the different behavior tables, and see the different quests or missions that were ongoing at the moment. They could also design the badges within this interface and just shoot them out to the front end. And balance the different missions with the frequency or the weight of the reward. And when we started to redesign it for onboarding, I went in, because I have a background in mostly educational, but mostly instructional design. So instead, a lot of gamification frameworks use the self-determination theory or maybe operant conditioning. But I went for another model. I went for the Perma Model. It's based on Mihail's flow theory, but it highlights engagement, relationship, meaning, positive emotion, and accomplishment. And when I read through a lot of different motivational psychological papers, I saw very much very common context base with gaming, but also in learning and onboarding as well. So I used the Perma Model as a framework when I redesigned the onboarding and the learning components in the Gwen. And I wrote 2 papers about it if you want to. I'm not here to talk about Gwen, I'm here to talk about other things. But there are academical papers about it. So the fourth work package in the was called War for Talent in the Garfield project, and it considered gamified onboarding. And here you can see this is a mock-up because I can see the lines aren't straight, but it was designed like this, and you got different kinds of missions. I will go into that later. But before we just started to design missions and mission paths, we did a thorough investigations. We were researchers after all. And we did gamification design workshops. We developed through, we looked at a lot of different design workshops framework. We look at some in gamification. There wasn't so many recorded. There were some very theoretical. There were also some research how effective they were and the outcome of them. So we had to look in another direction. And I happen to have a background in human-computer interaction. So we looked into the sister discipline of human-computer interaction, UX. And we took a lot of inspiration from different UX designers, Niesel and Norman group, for example, but also looked into the universal design framework. And we end up with a workshop that did context analysis, persona creation, key objective identification, a journey map creation, visualization of the product, and a gamification design chart. When we researched the outcome of this, we used a multi-sited ethnography approach, and it resulted in, we participated in 7 half-day gamification design workshops with different global manufacturing companies during 4 months. Most of the manufacturing companies were based in Sweden, in different parts of Sweden, but I cannot tell which one they were, but you know, they have a lot of different companies such as Volvo, SKF, they also have Scania. Yeah, they have a lot of, Sweden have a lot of production companies, clearly. And the design workshops ran for about 4 hours each. And in these different design workshops, it partook about 40 different specialists from companies, human resource management, operation management, research and development, and training and development departments. So we got a lot of information how they thought a good digital but also gamified onboarding should be designed and created. When we did the evaluation, we did participant observations, we used focus group, and we also used seamless structured interviews. It was also, we had planned to do some surveys as well, but when we should start with the quantitative research, Corona or COVID-19 struck. So all these companies stopped their recruitment, so they didn't have any new employees. So we couldn't do the quantitative research, which is quite sad actually, because it would have generated more data and very interesting data, I presume. So what was the outcome? The outcome of all these design workshops, redesigning when, through different motivational and game design framework, we ended up with a smartphone application called the onboarding game. And we didn't design the game elements as one element. We thought that if gamification shall be effective, we have to design them in an ecology. So the game element, it's more like a module. And here you can see the achievement element. We still call it the achievement, not to confuse anyone. It still had the classical badge, but as you can see, it also had a process bar. So you can see if you have how long you have proceeded in achieving the badge or the achievement. But also we may use the game mechanic tiers, so you can achieve or you can get the badge or achievement in, I think it was bronze, silver, and gold, and I think they added diamond later. And we used the game, the motivational psychology and game design mechanism. We thought that every achievement should provide user with goal, clarity, directness, and sense of accomplishment. It should also provide the user with motivation through competence and reinforcement, not just playing tick, 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 tick. And the design principles for all the badges were also that it needs to be difficult to achieve to provide competence indication. And it should also be clear for the user how to achieve them. When we designed the level module, the game module, we combined avatar, points, process bar, and level. And the motivation psychology and the game design mechanism we used was a present indication of progress for the user in the system, represented user skill development in information system, and also that correlated with investment logic. A high level meant that the user was putting in a high investment in the product, and it created engagement and motivation. And the level correspond with the user notion of development. Levels should be balanced in a numerical scale that intensifies via user action in the information system. And the last bullet point, it's actually the Some is omitted, of course, but this is the mathematical calculation on the level progression graph. But if I should tell you the whole calculation, I will not have a job tomorrow. Okay, so it's some of it. And the game, the mission module used challenges, process bar, and map. We used, I can say this, we used looked at a lot of different design patterns for game design books when we were identifying how to redesign this or design this. And it should provide the user with a directness and context, provide motivation through competence. It should provide a call to action. And we also looked at the nudge theory, how to engage the users. And the design principles, the content should be designed corresponding of the purpose of use of the application. The difficulty should be designed with a progressive approach, a qualitative scaling instead of quantitative, and the completion of mission should be easily tracked by the user. And here is, for example, a mission. It was one of the first ones in the onboarding. So you should create an elevator pitch about yourself, so you can pitch fast when you met someone at the new company, so they get a feeling of you and see how they can help you with the onboarding and how you can help them. So these kind of sociable missions. And how was this communicated? And I think that this was the part that we researchers and as well the gamification designers from the gamification company Insert Coin had the least to do with. So when they communicated this, they sent out an email for all the new employees saying, we have developed a new way to onboard new employees. In addition to local activities, our ambition is to have an onboarding experience that is exciting, modern, and fun. We have created a game, the onboarding game. And in the pamphlet concerning this gamification approach on digital onboarding, it had as you can see, they also emphasized game. They didn't mention gamification. And this was very problematic due to when we did, everybody thought from the design workshops to the end users that they should design or they should play a game. But as we are at Gamification Europe, we know that gamification is not a game. It has more to do with motivational psychology and social behavior studies in the field of social behaviors. So here are some excerpts from the workshops. I have seen my son play. He can be at it for hours. I want our course to function like that. I would like to see what the game looks like. When can you deliver the mockups? So in all the attended design workshop, it existed a misinterpretation between the gamification studio and the specialists about gamification. There was a very limited understanding of what it meant to gamify onboarding content. And it created a lot of frustration in the design and development process. And you can read more about this. I wrote a paper about it. It will be presented in January, not in this very, how do you say, delightful hotel, because it's digital now. So I will sit here in Sweden, cold instead. But you can attend and read the paper Lost in Translation, a study on misconception, miscommunication, and concerns when implementing gamification in corporate retraining. But another early conclusion is that the perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use, created a gamification acceptance in the newly employed at the different production, the manufacturing companies. And here are some excerpts. and I can read one. I think it was simple to start using the app. It has different choices on the left side, the achievements, level, mission, and I think it was good. The good thing about the app is that it told you what to do always. And our conclusion for the focus groups and interviews is that there was a positive attitude towards the application regarding entertaining approach on onboarding, perceived usefulness, ease of use, and corporate innovation. They also thought that it was very authentic, and the assignments had the social assignments had the most impact on the employees. But we realized that we had a too broad approach, trying to including every employee to learn about the company vision and mission. So it appeared too comprehensive for some. Therefore, we recommend for all you out there doing this, to include group segmentation instead, so you can get different mission paths depending on where in the company you are working. Also, we tried to use a gamified self-reflection. I didn't show it now, but and it, instead of creating some kind of self-efficacy, it was viewed as an obstacle in the gamification flow. And if you want to know more, this will be presented at the eHeight 2021. It's in April. And another outcome of Garfield is a book that I wrote with one of my research colleagues called The Automation Game Master. That it's a 200-page book that it's about digitalization, onboarding, change management, using different gamification tools or motivational affordances. And another outcome is that InsertCoin nowadays have employed me as a scientific officer, and also that they work a lot with retraining, learning, and corporate pre-boarding and onboarding. Yeah, I think that is my presentation. So are there any questions?
Yes, there are. Thank you very, very much. That was very, very insightful. Can we read this paper before April, or should we wait for April?
You have to wait. That's one rule of academia.
Yes.
That you cannot. But the HIX is coming up in 2 months. So and I think it's open access. So you can read it in middle of January. You can read that one.
Okay,
and
that's
I
cool.
presented parts of it at the Gamifying conference, the Juha-Mari Tampere conference, and it's called the first rule of gamification: don't talk about gamification.
That is excellent. And we can already buy this book?
No,
or no?
It will hit the stores in December. So in 2 weeks, I have to finish my last conclusions. Yes.
Yeah, December is in 3 days, by the way. So when did this year pass? Anyway, we have 3 minutes to go. No, 2 minutes to go, 2.5. And there are a couple of questions. I'd like to ask the one with the higher votes by Eric. He says that I believe gamification should be invisible to the end user, like good design, 99% invisible sort of. Question, do you think users should be told they are about to use a gamified product? It's a good question.
Maybe, maybe not. I have comprehended that if you talk about gamification, everybody is anticipating something else, like a game, for example, because there's a definition problem, as I asked the question in the beginning of the talk. I think it could be more like a gameful design approach, maybe. I think that, and a lot of UXers has already taken a lot of the design principles from gamification and just calls it UX. So I think that the hype word gamification is starting to fade out, and we just talk about motivational design or something.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I hope it helps Eric. All right, we have 1.5 minutes. Let's take one more, or no? Okay. Eric is curating the questions. So for those of you that do not see your answers, your questions answered yet, do not be afraid. Pete will share them with the speakers and you will get answers afterwards. So the other question that has good votes is, I would like to know more about how self-reflection was seen as an obstacle in gamification.
It was so tedious because we decided to try to implement the Badura metacognitive approach to get engaged in your work, but instead they just wanted to climb in their progression and level up. Who doesn't? So they just as someone said, I just click, I don't care anymore because I want to do the missions instead. So that was the problem. We shouldn't have added experience points to the self-reflection, and I think reflecting when using a handheld smartphone, it's quite hard. You should sit in focus groups, try to reflect and discuss what the week and so on. So that's a design flaw, but it is.
Yeah. Introducing a stressful pressure to answer doesn't really help. It's counteractive to reflection. Yeah. Right. So time is up. Thank you very, very much, Adam. That was really, really helpful and really nice to hear. Adam will stay around, right? So you'll see Adam in the lounge and you'll be able to talk. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have a lot more insights from Adam.
Yeah, thank you.
Can we ask questions while I'm chasing up our next speaker?
Okay, then.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, all right. So the next question would be, to make unhealthier, worse choices, for example, bigger portions, extra cheese, etc. That's the intro to the question. So the question is, how do you ensure ethical outcomes with nudging in gamified system?
That's so interesting because I just written, a research proposal for, I cannot say which funding, but we are talking about good gamification or gamification for good, ethical gamification design, and also nudges in gamification. And I think Sunstein and Thaler talks about when a nudge isn't used for good, it should be called sludge instead. So I think you can use the Thaler and Sunstein nudge book as a good, guideline for using nudges in a good way. But also thinking about how gamification and the research done by the Tampere University on gamification. I think in the upcoming decade, it will be a lot of discussion about these kinds of design choices.